What if the white grains sitting quietly on your kitchen table carried a power you never understood? Not magic, not superstition, but something deeper, something tied to human fear, human hope, and human imagination. Across Istanbul, Morocco, Nigeria, India, Malaysia, Indonesia, people swear by salt. Some say a pinch of salt stopped a child's nightmares. Some say sprinkling it at the door removed heaviness from their homes. Others claim it broke a strange pattern of bad luck. And millions online repeat these stories with complete certainty. But here is the real question. Are these events miracles? Are they coincidences? Or are they misunderstandings repeated so many times that they became truth without ever being checked? Tonight, you will walk three paths: the Book of Allah, the authentic Sunnah, and the world of scientific evidence. By the end of this journey, you will know exactly when salt helps, when it does nothing, and when relying on it becomes harmful to your Aqidah. Before we proceed, quickly drop the country you are watching from in the comment section, so we know where our brothers and sisters are watching from. If you are ready, let's begin. Salt, something so small, yet it has been feared, worshipped, misused, misunderstood, and even weaponized across centuries. Some called it protection, some called it purification, some called it a doorway, and some, without realizing, were calling for something they could never control. But before we dive deep into the myths, the rituals, and the shocking truth, we need to ask a simple question. Why salt? Why this tiny substance that sits on every kitchen table today? Because salt is one of the oldest elements humans interacted with. It preserved food. It saved lives. It was traded like gold. Entire wars were fought over it. Civilizations collapsed because of it. And with something so powerful, humans began to believe it held more than physical value. They believed it carried spiritual weight. They believed it had the ability to attract or repel unseen forces. But here's the twist nobody expects. Most of what people believe about salt today, especially the supernatural parts, did not come from the Qur'an, did not come from the Sunnah, and did not come from any authentic revelation. It came from ancient civilizations, from pagan traditions, from cultures that existed thousands of years before Islam. And many of those beliefs quietly slipped into modern society without people noticing. And now those beliefs are everywhere. Sprinkling salt in corners, throwing salt over shoulders, putting salt in bathing water, using salt to cleanse a house, using salt to chase jinn, demons, or spirits. People do these things without asking. Where did this come from? Is this real? Is this backed by revelation? Or are we blindly repeating rituals from people who used to worship stones, stars, and shadows? So before we continue, I want you to hear this clearly. When it comes to protection, healing, or removing evil, Islam never leaves you confused. Islam never leaves you chasing theories. Islam gives you direct, clear, powerful answers. And the truth behind salt and its hidden power is nothing like what people tell you, because the real power is something completely different. And once you understand it, your entire life, your home, and your faith will shift in a way you never expected. But first, to truly understand how this tiny white crystal became the center of fear and ritual, we need to go back, way back, thousands of years before the Prophet Muhammad, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, before Isa, before Musa, before Ibrahim, before Nuh, before recorded history, back to the very first humans who discovered salt. They didn't understand chemistry. They didn't understand minerals. They simply understood one thing: salt changed everything. Food lasted longer. Meat didn't rot. Wounds stopped bleeding. Bacteria died. Bodies healed faster. And when something works, humans give it meaning. Humans give it power. Humans attach the supernatural when they don't understand the natural. And that's where it began. They began to believe salt could protect them from curses, protect them from spirits, protect them from night creatures, protect them from anything they feared. But then something strange happened. Whenever a ritual involved salt, and things seemed to get better, people assumed the salt itself held spiritual power. They forgot the real factors: psychology, placebo, timing, coincidence, normal life events. And eventually, salt became a symbol, a superstition, a ritualistic tool, A tool passed from civilization to civilization, from Babylon to Egypt, to Greece, to Rome, to Persia, to Africa, and finally into modern culture. Until today, people still use salt for things revelation never taught, but now we're getting closer to the real truth. Because while salt became a symbol for protection, Islam teaches something entirely different. Protection does not come from objects. Protection comes only from Allah. So why do people still believe in salt? Because humans like shortcuts. They like physical objects they can hold, sprinkle, or touch. It feels immediate. It feels practical. It feels spiritual. But feelings can deceive, and the shocking truth is this: salt can help you physically, but it cannot protect you spiritually. No jinn fears salt. No demon runs away because of it. No evil presence disappears because someone sprinkled crystals on the floor. Evil does not fear salt. Evil fears something else, something far more powerful, something many people today have abandoned, neglected, or use only occasionally. And once you understand what that thing is, everything you believed about protection, everything people told you, everything you saw online, will collapse instantly. We'll uncover that in a moment. But first, we need to expose the deepest myths behind salt, one by one, so you never fall into them again. Let's begin. Myth number 1. The belief that salt can chase away jinn. This idea is everywhere. People tell you to put salt in corners. They tell you to mix salt with water and spray it around your home. They tell you to bathe with salt. They tell you evil cannot stay where salt is present. But ask yourself a simple question. If salt truly had spiritual power, if salt could repel evil, then why is it never mentioned in the Qur'an? Why is it never mentioned in the Sahih Hadith? Why did the Prophet ﷺ never use it, never recommend it, never hint at it? Not once. Not in any authentic narration. For something so widely used today, you would expect at least one mention, just one, but there is none. Because in Islam, protection is never attached to physical objects unless Allah Himself has given them power, like the Zamzam water or the black stone. Salt was never given that status. So the idea that salt harms jinn is a myth, a superstition, a belief inherited from older civilizations, not from revelation. Now here comes myth number 2, the idea that salt can cleanse a house spiritually. Some people believe that cleaning with salt, washing the floor with salt, or burning salt removes bad energy or negative presence. Where did this come from? It came from ancient Egyptian practices. It came from Babylonian temples. It came from Greek household rituals. It came from African tribal traditions. It came from European pagan beliefs. All of these cultures used salt in rituals long before Islam existed. And as civilizations merged over time, these ideas crept into ordinary households. But listen carefully. Salt can clean dirt. Salt can remove stains. Salt can disinfect. Salt can purify water. But spiritually, salt does nothing. If salt could cleanse spiritual harm, then the Prophet ﷺ would have told us. Jibreel would have revealed it. The Qur'an would have commanded it, but it didn't. Because protection is not about what you sprinkle. Protection is about what you recite, what you believe, what you place your trust in. Now here's myth number 3. Salt baths. People sit in salt water thinking it will wash away spiritual darkness, witchcraft, evil eye, or jinn influence. But again, no revelation supports this. What salt can do is soothe muscles, relax the body, improve circulation, and help with fatigue. These are physical benefits, medical benefits, but spiritual healing comes from something else entirely. Which brings us to a deeper, more dangerous myth. Some people believe that jinns scream when salt touches them. They believe salt burns them. They believe salt weakens them. But this is not mentioned in Revelation. This is not found in authentic hadith. This is not supported by Islamic scholarship. Instead, it came from medieval folklore, exorcism traditions, and pagan purification rituals. Salt does not burn jinn. Salt does not harm them. Salt does not weaken them. Jinn are beings of smokeless fire. They are not harmed by a mineral. Which leads us to the most important truth. If salt has no spiritual power, then what does? What is the real shield? The real weapon? The real protection? Every scholar across centuries agreed. Protection is built on three things. Number 1, Tawheed, the heart that relies on Allah alone. Number 2, Adkar, the daily remembrances the Prophet ﷺ himself used. Number 3, Qur'an, especially Surah Baqarah, Ayatul Kursi, and the last 3 surahs. These are the real spiritual tools. These are the real shields. These are the real sources of protection. Not salt, not objects, not rituals invented later. But now we need to go deeper, because there is a reason people feel relief after using salt. There is a reason people think it works. There is a reason so many cultures believed in it for thousands of years. And the truth behind that reason is more shocking than the myths themselves. It has nothing to do with jinn, nothing to do with evil eye, nothing to do with spirits. It has everything to do with your brain, your stress response, your psychology, your nervous system, and your mind's ability to convince your body that something is working even when it's not. This is where it gets interesting, because the real power people feel when using salt has nothing to do with the supernatural. It comes from something else entirely, something far more human, far more scientific, and far more manipulative than people realize. And once you understand it, you will never see salt the same way again. Before we expose the real reason people think salt works, you must understand something crucial. Human beings are not just physical creatures. We carry layers of emotion, memory, expectation, and fear. And when these layers react to an object or a ritual, the mind can produce sensations that feel spiritual, even when the cause is completely natural. This brings us to the first hidden force behind salt-related experiences, the expectation effect. When someone believes a thing will protect them, the body responds as if it is already protected. Their heart rate slows, their anxiety reduces, their breathing becomes easier, their muscles relax, their mind becomes clearer. This creates a powerful internal shift, a shift that feels real, a shift that feels spiritual, a shift that feels like something is leaving the body, but nothing supernatural left. What left was fear, and fear is a powerful illusion maker. Now here is the second hidden force, conditioned association. If you grow up in a house where salt is used during fear, your mind links salt with relief. If your grandmother used it after nightmares, if your mother used it during sickness, if neighbors used it after arguments, if relatives used it when the house felt heavy, then your brain builds a connection. Salt equals safety. Salt equals comfort. Salt equals protection. Salt equals relief. So when you use it as an adult, the body responds instantly, not because of jinn, but because of memory. Your childhood experiences return. Your brain says, this helped us before, even if it never actually did. But here is the third hidden force, the strongest one, the ritual effect. Whenever a human performs a ritual, any ritual, something strange happens. The mind becomes focused, the body becomes calm, the muscles release tension, the person feels in control, the fear reduces, the anxiety drops, the environment feels different. This has been studied for decades. Even rituals with no meaning produce relief. Salt rituals are no different. When someone pours salt into water, when they sprinkle it around a room, when they scrub their skin with it, when they place it at the door, what they are really doing is giving their mind a sense of control. And a mind that feels in control begins to relax. And a relaxed mind feels spiritually lighter, not because salt expelled anything, but because fear loosened its grip. But here's where things get dangerous. When someone believes salt helped them once, they begin to rely on it again and again. Slowly, without noticing, they move their trust away from Allah and place it into an object. This is the doorway to shirk al-asghar, the minor shirk that destroys tawakkul. This is why scholars warn against it. Not because salt is haram, salt is halal. Salt is natural. Salt is just a mineral. The danger is not the substance. The danger is the belief. Because when reliance leaves Allah, even for a moment, everything collapses. But now, we reach the most shocking part. If salt has no spiritual power, if salt cannot repel jinn, if salt is not mentioned in Revelation, then why do some people absolutely swear that strange things happened after using it? Why do people report sleeping better? Why do some say the nightmares stopped? Why do others say the house felt lighter? Why do some insist that negative dreams disappeared? Are all these people lying? Are all of them imagining? No, they are not lying. They are not imagining. Something real happens, but it's not spiritual, it's not supernatural, it's not mystical. It is something far more powerful, something everyone experiences, but few understand. The nervous system reset. Salt interacts with the skin and senses in ways that mimic emotional relief. It affects skin receptors. It affects temperature. It affects tension, release. It affects microcirculation. These physical changes create sensations many mistake for spiritual cleansing: lightness, warmth, calm, release, relief. These are biological processes, not spiritual events, but the person experiencing them does not feel biology. They feel relief, and relief feels supernatural. This is how myths are born: a real physical sensation combined with a wrong spiritual interpretation produces a belief that spreads for centuries. Now that you understand this, the question becomes, if salt does not protect spiritually, if salt only triggers psychological and biological changes, then what protects you for real? What shields you from jinn? What guards your house? What lifts spiritual heaviness? What blocks negative whispers? What clears the unseen harm you may fear? For that, we must now enter a different chapter entirely, the chapter of true protection, as described in the Qur'an and the authentic Sunnah. Real protection begins with revelation, not tradition, not culture, not childhood memories, not rituals invented later. Real protection is described by Allah Himself. Real protection is demonstrated by the Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And real protection does not rely on objects, it relies on actions. Let us begin with the first and greatest shield, Surah Al-Baqarah. The Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, said that shaitan flees from a house where Surah Al-Baqarah is recited, not sprinkled with salt, not washed with salt water, but recited. The words of Allah change the unseen. The words of Allah push back darkness. The words of Allah are heavier than any ritual humans invented. The second shield, Ayatul Kursi, the verse that describes the throne of Allah, a verse so powerful that every authentic narration connected to it describes protection. Protection while sleeping, protection while awake, protection from harm. One verse, not one cup of salt. The third shield, the last three surahs, Al-Ikhlas, Al-Falaq, An-Nas. Revelation specifically sent for protection. Revelation designed for refuge. Revelation recited by the Prophet every night, every morning, and after every prayer. If salt had spiritual value, the Prophet would have used it. But he didn't. He used surahs, dua, dhikr, tawheed. These are the pillars of spiritual protection. Now here is the fourth shield, daily adhkar, the dua when waking up, the dua before sleeping, the dua when entering the home, the dua when leaving, the dua for safety, the dua against fear, the dua for strength. Every protection the Prophet taught is verbal, not physical. He gave us words, not objects. He taught us remembrance, not rituals. Now here is the fifth shield, sincerity of the heart. A heart attached to Allah becomes untouchable. A heart filled with tawakkul becomes a fortress. A heart grounded in remembrance becomes a shield. No jinn, no envy, no unseen force can pass through. This is why people who read Qur'an daily feel safe. This is why people who make morning and evening adhkar feel protected. This is why people who recite Baqarah never complain about their homes feeling heavy. But now comes the turning point. If revelation gave us all the tools we need, why do people still turn to salt? Why do people still look for physical shortcuts? Why do they still believe in objects? Why do they still turn to rituals with no evidence? The answer is simple. Because humans crave something they can touch, something they can hold, something they can sprinkle, something they can see. A physical action feels stronger than a verbal one. This is why rituals spread so easily. This is why cultures adopt them. This is why myths survive for thousands of years. A ritual feels like effort. A ritual feels like control. A ritual feels like you are doing something. But revelation teaches the opposite. The strongest protection is invisible. The strongest shield is spiritual. The strongest weapon is dhikr, not salt, not ash, not herbs, not objects, not mixtures, just the remembrance of Allah. Now let us address a final question. If salt has no spiritual power, is it completely useless? The answer is no. Salt does have real physical effects. Salt relaxes muscles. Salt reduces inflammation. Salt improves circulation. Salt can calm the nervous system. Salt can soothe the skin. Salt can relieve stress. Salt can help you sleep better. Salt can clean wounds. Salt can disinfect. These physical benefits are real, documented, observable, and these benefits can feel like spiritual cleansing. They can feel like negativity leaving the body. They can feel like the mind opening. They can feel like energy lifting. But the cause is physical, not supernatural. Salt improves the body. The body influences the mind. The mind influences the emotions. And emotions influence how you interpret an experience. This is why so many people swear salt worked. Not because something unseen was removed, but because something internal shifted. The heaviness was stress. The tightness was anxiety. The exhaustion was emotional fatigue. The pressure in the chest was tension. The lump in the throat was fear. When the body relaxes, these sensations disappear. People mistake that disappearance for spiritual healing, but the truth is simpler. Salt helped their body helped their mind felt better, and their heart interpreted that relief as spiritual. Now, this raises a bigger question. If salt gives physical relief, is it wrong to use it? The answer is no. It is not wrong as long as you do not attach spiritual beliefs to it. You can use salt for your muscles. You can use it for your skin. You can use it to clean. You can use it for hygiene. You can use it for relaxation. You can use it for medical benefits. Just do not give it a power Allah never gave it. The moment you believe salt chases jinn, the moment you believe salt protects you, the moment you believe salt shields your home, you have stepped into superstition and away from Tawheed. And that is where the danger lies. Now that we have exposed myths and explained psychology and clarified the truth from revelation, we must enter the deepest layer. Why belief in salt is spreading faster now than at any time in history. Salt beliefs are spreading again, not because people suddenly discovered something new, but because the human mind is vulnerable in moments of fear, uncertainty, and imbalance. And today, more people are afraid than ever. More people feel watched. More people feel unlucky. More people feel overwhelmed. More people feel their homes are heavy. More people feel their sleep is disturbed. More people feel their thoughts are disorganized. More people feel anxiety without reason. When the human heart is unsettled, it searches for anything at all that promises relief. And this is where salt becomes attractive. Salt is cheap. Salt is simple. Salt is familiar. Salt is immediate. Salt requires no scholar. Salt requires no recitation. Salt requires no discipline. Salt requires no sincerity. Salt requires no transformation. It feels like a shortcut. A sprinkle, and your problem disappears. A cup in the corner of the room, and the atmosphere changes. A little on the doorstep, and the house becomes peaceful. And because the action is physical, people feel they have done something. But here is the truth that is rarely spoken. Whenever people abandon spiritual discipline, they replace it with physical rituals. When dhikr becomes difficult, rituals become attractive. When Qur'an feels far, shortcuts feel close. When dua becomes rare, objects become tempting. Salt becomes a substitute for remembrance. Objects become a substitute for Tawheed. Rituals become a substitute for revelation. Now here is the deeper layer. People are more stressed today than at any time in human history. And stress makes the mind interpret normal events as supernatural. A door slams from wind, the mind says, energy. Shadows move, the mind says, presence. A child wakes crying, the mind says, attack. A cold spot in the room, the mind says, entity. A sequence of bad days, the mind says, curse. A heavy feeling, the mind says, jinn. Stress amplifies fear. Fear amplifies imagination. Imagination amplifies belief. Belief amplifies rituals. Salt becomes a solution. But there is something even more powerful driving this trend: the algorithm. Social media platforms magnify fear-based content. If you watch one video about jinn, you will receive 10 more. If you watch one video about salt working, you will see hundreds. If you watch one ruqya clip, your entire feed becomes supernatural. People do not realize that their beliefs are not forming from research, not from Qur'an, not from Sunnah, but from repetition. And repetition becomes truth in the human mind. One person claims salt worked, another repeats it, a third records it, a fourth dramatizes it, a fifth exaggerates it, a sixth invents a story to gain views. Before long, millions believe. A viral myth becomes a religious rule. A cultural practice becomes Sunnah. A weak narration becomes authentic. And a superstition becomes normalized. Now let us expose something most people never consider. Even when salt appears to work, it may have nothing to do with salt. Sometimes, the act of cleaning the home while placing salt removes dust, mold, and humidity. That alone changes the atmosphere of the house. Sometimes, the family becomes calm because they believe they did something effective. That reduces arguments, increases peace, and creates emotional harmony. Sometimes, the act of sprinkling salt is paired with dua, recitation, or intention. The spiritual benefit came from the recitation, not the salt. Sometimes, the bad energy people feel is simply poor sleep, poor diet, or unresolved stress. Sometimes, the cursed object they removed when sprinkling salt was the real issue, not the salt. Sometimes, the jinn attack they feared was actually anxiety or sleep paralysis. Belief is powerful. Fear is powerful. Expectation is powerful. When your mind expects cleansing, you feel clean. When your mind expects relief, you feel lighter. When your mind expects protection, your heart stabilizes. When your heart stabilizes, your home feels different. This is why salt appears effective, not because it repels the unseen, but because it resets the mind. But this brings us to an uncomfortable truth. Most people who rely on salt are not reciting their morning and evening adhkar. They are not reading Surah Al-Baqarah. They are not reciting Ayatul Kursi before sleep. They are not reciting the 3 kuls daily. They are not regulating their stress. They are not managing their environment. They are not addressing emotional wounds. They are not resolving family conflict. Salt becomes a distraction, a surface-level fix, a comfortable ritual replacing a difficult responsibility. This is where the problem becomes spiritual, not cultural. Salt is harmless, but relying on salt is harmful, not because of the salt itself, but because it replaces what Allah commanded. And if a person starts believing salt has independent power, that becomes dangerous. It begins as culture, it becomes belief, then it becomes dependency, then it becomes fear, then it becomes Aqidah corruption, and many people do not realize how quickly they cross that line. Now, the next part of this journey is essential. We will now examine every major salt claim, one by one, and classify each one with the truth: authentic, weak, cultural, scientific, psychological, or myth. Now we begin the catalogue, the claims people repeat, the beliefs people hold, the assumptions that spread faster than facts. For each claim, we will classify it with one word: authentic, weak, cultural, scientific, psychological, or myth. Let us begin with the most common claim of all. Claim 1. Salt repels jinn. This is the sentence you see everywhere, in comments, in short videos, in long videos, in blogs, in folk stories. People repeat it with confidence, as if Allah mentioned it, or the Prophet taught it. But here is the truth. There is no authentic Quranic verse. There is no authentic hadith. There is no authentic narration that states, salt repels jinn. Not a single one. No prophet used salt for this purpose. No companion used salt for this purpose. No early scholar used salt for this purpose. This claim is cultural, not religious. And what people interpret as jinn fleeing is often one of 3 things: physical relief, emotional relief, psychological suggestion, nothing supernatural, classification, cultural. Claim 2. Salt blocks shaitan from entering the home. Again, widely believed, repeated with certainty. But ask yourself 2 questions. Did the Prophet ever say this? Did any companion ever practice it? The answer is no. The Prophet ﷺ gave us clear instructions on what blocks devils, saying Bismillah before closing a door, reciting Ayatul Kursi, reciting Al-Baqarah in the home. These are authentic, these are direct, these are guaranteed. Salt is never mentioned, not once. Classification: cultural, with no evidence. Claim 3. Salt absorbs bad energy in the home. This claim sounds scientific, but it is not. Salt does not absorb energy. Salt does not remove negativity. Salt does not influence the unseen. But salt can absorb some moisture in a closed environment. It can reduce humidity slightly. It can reduce certain odors. It can improve the feeling of a room indirectly. People confuse that physical change with spiritual change, and the mind fills in the rest. Classification: scientific in part, psychological in result, not spiritual. Claim 4. Salt water destroys seer. This one is complex. Some people mix ruqya water with salt. They drink it. They bathe with it. They wash the home with it. But understand the truth. The only thing that affects sihr from revelation is the Qur'an itself. Not the salt, not the water, not the mixture. Ruqya works because of Allah's words, not because of materials. Salt water may feel cleansing. It may relax the body. It may calm the mind. It may make you feel in control. But none of that destroys seer spiritually. Only Allah removes seer. Only Qur'an confronts it. Only dua fights it. Salt is neutral. Classification: mixed ruqya is valid. Salt has no spiritual power. Claim 5. Salt cures 70 diseases. It's a prophetic hadith. This one spreads a lot, but the hadith is weak, in some versions fabricated. It cannot be used as evidence. It cannot be treated as a sunnah. It cannot be considered reliable. Salt has natural benefits, yes. Salt has physical effects, yes. Salt has medical uses, yes. But those are scientific, not religious. The narration is not strong enough to make it an Islamic rule. Classification: weak. Claim 6. Salt rituals exist in Muslim countries, therefore they must be Islamic. Here is the misunderstanding. Muslim countries are full of non-Islamic practices. Centuries of culture, centuries of mixing, centuries of superstition. We see this in Morocco, in Turkey, in Pakistan, in Sudan, in Indonesia, in the Gulf, in Africa, in South Asia. Cultural habits become attached to Islam even when they have no root in Islam. And people assume if Muslims do it, it must be Islamic. But culture is not evidence. Emotion is not evidence. Popularity is not evidence. Tradition is not evidence. Only Qur'an and Sunnah are evidence. Classification: cultural. Claim 7. Salt, placed at the doorway, protects the home. Many families do this. Some have done it for generations. The doorway becomes a symbol, a barrier, a wall, a shield. But spiritually, this has no basis. What protects the home is saying Bismillah, closing the door with remembrance, reciting Ayatul Kursi, reciting Surah Al-Baqarah. These are not cultural suggestions, they are authentic hadith. Salt, again, is never mentioned. Classification: cultural. Claim 8. A salt bath removes evil eye. This is one of the fastest growing claims online. But the evil eye is treated through ruqya, reciting Qur'an, dua, the invocations taught by the Prophet, pouring water from the person who gave the eye if known, which is authentic. Salt baths may relax the body. They may ease tension. They may create a feeling of cleansing, but that feeling is physical and emotional, not spiritual. Classification: psychological and physical, not spiritual. Claim 9. Salt enhances the effectiveness of ruqya. This mixes truth with assumption. Ruqya works because of the Qur'an. Ruqya works because of Allah's permission. Ruqya works because of sincerity. Salt does not enhance Qur'an. Salt does not strengthen dua. Salt does not amplify remembrance. It only enhances your feeling of the experience, not the spiritual effectiveness. Classification: myth. Claim 10. Salt rituals are ancient, therefore they must have something to them. Ancient does not mean correct. Ancient does not mean spiritual. Ancient does not mean effective. Humans have practiced superstitions for thousands of years. Bones, stones, smoke, ash, herbs, symbols, patterns, objects, rituals. Age does not equal authenticity. Duration does not equal truth. Repetition does not equal revelation. The Qur'an came to erase superstition, not to validate it. Classification: Myth rooted in antiquity. We have now classified the 10 most common claims. But there is a deeper problem, a problem rarely spoken about. Why do so many people feel attacked or disturbed in the first place? Why do they feel something dark is present? Why do they feel heaviness? Why do they feel fear? Why do they feel watched? Why do they feel unsafe? Why do they feel spiritually unstable? And why do these feelings make salt seem powerful? This is the next part of our journey. So in the end, after all the stories, after all the whispers, after all the things people claim, it comes down to something very simple. Salt is salt, a creation of Allah, a blessing when used correctly, a test when people exaggerate its abilities, and a danger when it becomes a shortcut. People rely on more than dua, more than tawakkul, more than the remembrance of Allah. Every culture adds its own layer, every family adds its own tradition, and every generation passes its own explanations. But the truth never changes. Only Allah brings benefit. Only Allah removes harm. And nothing, not salt, not rituals, not objects, can override His decree. If salt brings comfort because it reminds you of cleanliness, purity, or your cultural background, that's fine. But if it becomes a belief, a dependency, a hidden, extra protector, something you trust, the way people trust, amulets, then it's no longer just salt. And that is exactly why we searched, step by step, through the Qur'an, the authentic Sunnah, the evidence of scholars, the patterns of human psychology, and the natural laws Allah placed in His creation. Now you know the boundaries. Now you know the difference. Now you know exactly where salt ends and where Tawheed begins. Before you leave, don't make the same mistake most people make. You've listened all the way to this point. You've learned things most people never question. So don't just walk away silently. Do the right thing. If this video opened your eyes, if it corrected even one belief you held, if it made you rethink something you used to accept blindly, then don't keep it to yourself. Because silence helps misinformation grow. So listen carefully here, don't skip this part. Like this video so the algorithm pushes it to people who desperately need to hear this. Subscribe so you don't go back to half-truths and spiritual shortcuts. And share it with someone who has been confused, misled, or struggling with these beliefs. Don't pretend you don't know someone who needs this. Don't act like it doesn't matter. It does, and you know it. Every share is sadaqah jariyah. Every correction is a protection. Every truth you pass on is a witness for you on the day of judgment. So don't just click away casually. Take responsibility. Like it, subscribe, share it, right now. And may Allah guide us, protect us, and keep our hearts firm upon the truth. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.